Imagine an AI that doesn't just answer health questions, but fights insurance denials and manages clinical trials. Today on Talking Sheet, we're breaking down the medical AI race, Claude's HIPAA pivot, ChatGPT's medical record sync, and the 1,600 agents transforming the lab. Welcome to the show, everyone. Let's get into it.
Okay, I want you to picture a laboratory. But it's, say, 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. The lights are all off. There is not a single human being in the building. It's just dead silent.
Sounds like the opening scene of a sci-fi horror movie.
It does, right?
Or at least a movie where things are about to go very, very wrong.
Well, inside this lab, behind the safety glass, a robotic arm, it just wakes up. It moves to a freezer, pulls out this tiny vial of specific enzyme, dispenses exactly 20 microliters into a test tube, and then places it into a centrifuge.
And the kicker is nobody told it to do that.
Exactly. No human told the robot to do that. Not directly anyway. A scientist just uploaded a PDF, a research paper from maybe 10 years ago, to an AI agent.
Okay.
And the AI, it read the paper, it understood the chemistry, and it realized, hey, I need to reproduce these results to verify a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And it remotely drove that robot to mix the chemical.
But ideally, it didn't blow up the lab in the process.
Hopefully not. But according to the stack of research we're unpacking today, this isn't just a what if. This is, sure, technically possible right now. Welcome to Talking Sheet.
Yeah.
Today, we are getting into the machinery that turns AI from a brain in a jar into a scientist that actually has hands.
It's a massive shift. I mean, we are moving from an AI that just reads science to an AI that can actually do science. And the implications for drug discovery and, well, honestly, for the safety of the world are pretty staggering.
So before we get to the robots mixing potentially dangerous chemicals, we should probably look at the landscape. Because if you've been following the news this January 2026, you know the big players are all making moves in healthcare.
Oh, everyone is. It feels like a huge pivot to biology.
It does.
And to really get why this robot scenario is such a big deal, you have to look at what the brains are up to. I mean, just this month, we saw Anthropic launch Claude for life sciences and Claude for healthcare.
And OpenAI dropped ChatGPT Health at almost the exact same time. But I looked at the press releases for both, and frankly, it felt a bit like better administration.
That's a very fair critique. I mean, look at Anthropic's play. They're connecting Claude to metadata for clinical trials and to CMS codes for billing.
Right.
It's incredibly useful if you're a hospital administrator trying to get paid or, a researcher trying to organize messy trial data. It makes the back office of science way more efficient.
And OpenAI, what's their angle?
They're going more for the consumer and the doctor. So connecting to Apple Health, wearables, a huge focus on privacy with HIPAA compliance. They even built this thing called Health Bench to prove their AI isn't just making up medical advice.
But again, look at the interaction. It's text in, text out.
Exactly. Or data in, data out.
And that's the whole brain in a jar problem we mentioned, isn't it? You have these super intelligent models that can, pass the medical boards. They can analyze 1 million pages of research.
But they can't physically do anything.
They can't hold a pipette. They can't look through a microscope.
Precisely. They're siloed. And that's the frustration scientists have had for years. You have the brain, the AI, and you have the hams, the centrifuges, the sequencers, the robotic handlers, but they don't speak the same language.
Right.
The AI speaks English or Python, and the robot speaks, well, usually some ancient proprietary driver code that hasn't been updated since 2015.
Which brings us to the main event for today. We're looking at a technical standard that claims to be that missing link. It's called SCP.
The Science Context Protocol.
Sounds a little dry. Protocol. But reading this paper from the Shanghai AI lab, I got the sense that this is actually the USB port for scientific reality.
That is the perfect analogy. SCP isn't an AI model itself. You don't chat with SCP.
No.
It's the connective tissue. It lets the brain, the AI plug into the lab equipment, and it doesn't care who manufactured them.
Yeah.
It turns the physical lab into a plug-and-play device for the AI.
Okay, so let's get under the hood. How does this actually work? Because I'm assuming it's a bit more complicated than just plugging in a cable.
It is.
The paper talks about a hub and spoke model.
It's a classic architecture, but they've applied it to this really, really difficult domain. You have to imagine it like a nervous system.
Okay, walk me through that.
So the hub is the central brain, the orchestrator. It manages the whole experiment. It handles security, which we definitely need to talk about later. And it just keeps track of what's happening. Then you have the clients.
That's me, the scientist.
That's you, the scientist, or maybe an AI agent acting for you. And then you have the spokes.
The spokes are the actual tools.
Exactly. The servers, or what they call edge nodes. An edge node could be a database, a software simulation, or that physical robotic arm in the wet lab we started with.
Okay, so the hub connects the scientist to the robot. But here's where I got a little stuck. Why do we need a special protocol for this? Why can't I just ask ChatGPT, tell the robot to mix the solution?
Because natural language is terrible for chemistry.
How so? It seems pretty straightforward.
It's just too ambiguous.
Yeah.
Think about it. If I tell you to add a pinch of salt while you're cooking pasta, that's fine. Your human judgment handles the ambiguity.
Sure.
But if I tell a robot to add a pinch of cyanide and it misinterprets pinch as bucket, or if it doesn't get the context of adding it slowly, we have a catastrophe.
Okay, so we need absolute precision.
We need determinism.
Right.
So SEP uses a standardized format called JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. It creates what's called a task graph.
A task graph.
And this breaks down a fuzzy command like run a PCR test into a rigorous step-by-step code execution plan.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in the code?
Well, instead of saying mix these, the JSON task graph says something like, Step 1, move arm to XYZ coordinates. Step 2, suction exactly 20 microliters. Step 3, verify weight variance is less than 0.1%. Step 4, dispense.
It literally turns science into code.
Exactly. And it does something else that's really crucial. It bridges the gap between the dry lab and the wet lab.
We should probably clarify that distinction. The paper really hammers on it.
They're historically two different worlds. The dry lab is all computational.
Computers predicting how a protein folds.
Right. And the wet lab is the messy reality. The fluids, the test tubes, the bacteria. And usually a human has to physically walk between them. You print out your simulation results, walk over to the bench, and start pipetting.
The old sneaker net.
The sneaker net, right. What SDP does is it allows a single experiment ID to just jump between them.
Yeah.
The system doesn't care if the tool is a software script, the dry lab, or a robot, the wet lab. It talks to both of them using the exact same protocol.
There's a specific component in the architecture that I thought was fascinating. They call it Thoth.
Ah, yes. Named after the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing.
Very fitting for a translator, I thought.
It is. And Thoth is really the heavy lifter here. It's the translator layer. You have the Thoth server and these Thoth OP nodes. Think of them as the bridge between the high-level request and the low-level machine code.
So if I, in theory, say, make me some aspirin, Thoth is the one figuring out the exact temperature settings and timings.
In a way, yes. Thoth takes that narrative, that high-level intent, and translates it into those atomic machine instructions we just talked about. It makes sure the hands understand exactly what the brain wanted. It's sort of writing the driver code on the fly.
And this isn't just theoretical, is it? Because often we see these papers and it's just a proposal. Wouldn't it be nice if...
No, this is live. The intern discovery platform that's built on SCP already lists over 1,600 tools.
1,600, that's a lot of hardware.
It is. Almost half are in biology, but it also covers physics, materials science, chemistry. It's a massive library of things this system can already control.
I want to go back to that intro scenario, the PDF to robot pipeline. This was case study 2 in the source material. Can we walk through what actually happens there step by step?
Yeah, this is basically the hello world of autonomous science. So imagine a researcher. Let's call her Sarah. She has a PDF of a chemical protocol. It's just a standard text document written for humans.
Okay, so she uploads the file.
She uploads it to the SCP client.
Okay.
Then the Thoth node reads it. It uses a large language model to pull out the materials needed, the quantities, the timings. It converts that messy human language into structured JSON.
So it digitizes the recipe.
Correct. Then, and this is so important, it runs a safety check. It simulates the mixture to make sure it's not going to explode or create a banned substance. Once that passes, the Thoth node dries the physical hardware to execute the experiment.
That seems to solve a massive problem in science. The whole crisis of reproducibility, doesn't it?
It solves it overnight. The reason we can't reproduce maybe 50% of scientific papers is that humans are slobby. We forget to write down that we stirred the solution for an extra 10 seconds or that the room was a bit cold that day.
Right.
With SCP, every single parameter is coded. If you run the script, you get the exact same actions every time.
But reproduction is just doing what we already did. Case study 4 is where it got really wild for me. The closed loop with the fluorescent proteins. This one sounded like the robot was actually thinking.
This is where we see the future. In this case, they didn't just tell the robot what to make. They gave the AI a goal, a mission. Find me a protein that glows brighter.
So the AI is in the driver's seat.
Completely.
Yeah.
The AI designs a protein candidate. That's the dry lab part. SCP routes that design to the robot. The robot synthesizes the protein. That's the wet lab part. Then the robot actually measures its brightness.
And here's the magic part.
The robot feeds that data right back into the AI. The AI looks at the result and goes, okay, that didn't work as well as I'd hoped. Let me try tweaking this molecule over here. And it just loops over and over again.
Without a human involved at all.
With minimal intervention, yeah. It becomes a self-improving engine of discovery. It's iterating at a speed no human team could ever match because it doesn't need to sleep, and it doesn't need to write a report between every single step.
Okay, I'm sold on the utility, but I need to put my skeptics hat on for a minute.
Matthew.
We've seen standards come and go. Anthropic has something they call MCP, the Model Context Protocol. Why can't we just use that? Why do we need another standard?
That's the big technical debate. And the SCP paper is actually pretty critical of Anthropic's MCP. They call it stateless.
Stateless in tech terms usually means it has no memory, right?
Exactly. Think of MCP like a receptionist with amnesia. You walk in, ask a question, they give you an answer, you leave. You come back 5 minutes later, and they have no idea who you are or what you asked before.
Useful for simple tasks, I guess, but terrible for a long-term project.
Right. MCP is great for connecting Claude to your Google Drive. You ask a question, it fetches a file, it answers. Done. But a scientific experiment is a process. It has a life cycle. Step 5 relies on the result of Step 1, which might have happened 3 days ago.
Ah, I see. So if the AI forgets that the sample is currently sitting in the incubator, it might try to add the next reagent way too early and ruin the whole thing.
Correct. SCP introduces what it calls scientific context. It's stateful. It remembers the goal, the constraints, the entire history of the experiment across thousands of steps. It also solves this multi-agent coordination problem.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, imagine you have 5 specialized AIs. One's an expert in biology, one in chemistry, one in data analysis. They all need to work together on one project. SCP acts as the shared whiteboard where they can all track the progress. MCP doesn't really have that built in.
But here's the catch. A standard is only a standard if people actually use it. And the paper admits that most AI labs right now are bespoke.
Walled gardens. Totally. Everyone is building their own custom rig. DeepMind has their setup. Novartis has theirs. They're all hardwired.
It's like the early days of computers before USB. You had a specific port for your printer, a totally different one for your mouse.
Exactly. SCP wants to be the USB for science. But for that to happen, you need buy-in. You need the big manufacturers, Thermo Fisher, Agilent, the people making these incredibly expensive microscopes, to write drivers for SCP.
If I'm a manufacturer, though, why would I do that? I want people locked into my software, not some open standard.
And that's the hurdle. But if the demand from scientists gets high enough, if every lab starts saying, we won't buy your microscope unless it talks to our AI, then the manufacturers will have to fold. We're in that chicken and egg phase right now.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Safety.
I knew you were going there.
We just described a system where I can upload a PDF and a robot starts mixing chemicals. If the hub is the brain, what happens if the brain gets hacked? Or what if the brain just goes rogue? Could a bad actor use this to synthesize a toxin? Or a bioweapon?
It is a massive new attack vector. The paper does discuss AI governance modules and secondary validation. So basically software checks that say, whoa, that looks like mustard gas. I'm not making that.
But software checks can be bypassed.
They can. Connecting the digital internet directly to physical chemical synthesis is inherently risky. I mean, right now, the bottleneck for making a bioweapon is that you need a PhD in virology and access to a restricted lab.
SCP potentially removed the need for the PhD.
It democratizes science, yes, but it also democratizes danger. It does. And there's another risk, too. Data provenance.
Meaning, can you trust the data? Is it real?
Yeah. In case study 3, they screened 50 molecules automatically. If the machine does all that work, how do you know the AI didn't just hallucinate a result to make you happy.
Here's the cure for cancer, boss. But it's just a bunch of random numbers it made up.
Exactly. And unlike a chatbot where you can go and check the answer on Google, here the robot supposedly did the work when you weren't even looking. Now, SCP's answer to this is the audit trail.
The JSON log.
Right, because everything is a log. Every single movement of the robot is recorded. You can theoretically replay the tapes.
Are we actually going to do that for every experiment?
That's the problem. This generates a massive amount of data. Humans will never be able to physically verify all of it. We are shifting from trusting the scientist to trusting the logs, and that requires a leap of faith in the protocol itself.
So where does this leave us? What's the outlook here?
I think in the short term, we're looking at hybrid labs. So humans are still doing the creative thinking, the what should we discover part, and the SCP agents are just doing the tedious stuff, the pipetting, the data cleaning.
The source mentioned the Dongzhan model in that context.
Yes, that model can already automate things like docking and toxicity prediction calculating LD50 scores. That kind of thing speeds up the early stages of drug discovery from months to just days. That's the immediate win.
Less time washing test tubes.
A lot less time.
And the long term. The paper talks about this global web of autonomous scientific agents. That sounds big.
The vision is basically science as a service. Imagine this. You're a scientist in London. You have an idea for a new battery material. You code up the experiment in an SCP client.
Okay.
SCP looks for available hardware on the network. It routes the wet lab work, the heating and mixing to some robotic facility in Shanghai that happens to have the right centrifuge available. And it routes the dry lab simulation to a supercomputer in Texas.
So I don't even need a lab anymore. I just need an SCP client and an API key.
That's the implication. You don't own the equipment. You don't own the computer. You just own the idea and the budget to rent the time.
Science just becomes cloud computing.
Exactly. It completely changes what it means to be a scientist. You aren't a pair of hands at a bench anymore. You're a conductor of a global orchestra of robots. And it lowers the barrier to entry massively. A kid in a dorm room could theoretically run an experiment that used to require a $10 million facility.
Provided they can get past the safety checks.
Ideally, yes.
It's a staggering possibility. It really feels like we're on the edge of a massive acceleration in how fast we can learn things. We should wrap up, but let's credit the source material we've been working from.
Right. The primary paper is titled SCP, Accelerating Discovery with a Global Web of Autonomous Scientific Agents. It comes from the team at the Shanghai Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. The authors include Yankai Jiang, Wenjie and several others.
And we also pulled context from those recent announcements by Anthropic with Claude for Life Sciences and, of course, OpenAI with ChatGPT Health.
It's important to see SCP not just as a paper, but as the potential infrastructure layer that could make all those other AI models truly useful in the physical world.
So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. We asked at the beginning about the robot doing the work. But if SCP allows an AI to plan the experiment, run the instruments, analyze the data, and even iterate on the design to find a solution, at what point does the AI become the author of the paper?
And the human is just the lab assistant who signs the checks.
Exactly. If you could rent a fully robotic lab through an API tomorrow, what is the first thing you would try to discover?
Thanks for listening to Talking Cheap.